Welcome back to the Resupply with me, Guy Next Door.
And me, DK.
Bringing you your weekly double tap of all things Space Marines and Laserforce. This week, we've got a not-so-special guest with us.
Fuck off.
If you couldn't already tell by his breathy tones, welcome back to the microphone, our old pal, Thanatos. Hey, buddy.
Oh no, I've lost my job again. Yeah, no, don't worry. I'm not coming to take your gerbs.
He's got better things to do with his time these days than hang out with lowly old us.
Yep. So I assume, obviously, the reason that we're having Than on today is that the FOMO has worked once again, and Than is here to announce that he is going to be Auckland's 6th player. Am I correct?
Completely wrong. I'm not Josh. I don't do that.
Well, that about wraps us up for this week.
Shots fired.
I've been Guy Next Door. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but you know, we miss you when you're not at Nationals, my friend.
Yeah, well, and so I'm not gonna say that I didn't consider it, because saying I didn't consider it, I mean, the thought very briefly did flash through my head, but then I remembered I'd have to go to Detroit, and all bets were off. No, the real reason is my band literally has like 3 shows right around that period. We're literally playing the 19th, the 20th, and the 27th of July. And if I'm gonna come and play for a team, I'm not gonna show up the fucking day before the tournament and have to leave basically the very early in the morning on the day after the tournament to make sure I account for any weather delays and getting back. Plus, you know, that screws up the practice flow and all that. So there were some real world considerations that went into the not allowing the FOMO to take hold.
So 2 things on this.
Sure. 1,
this is a textbook definition of what I believe they call on the internet the humble brag.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
And 2,
humble brag.
I noticed that of all those dates that you listed, none of them fall between July 22nd and 26th, when Nationals will be held this year. So I really have to question your commitment, Mr. Reigning All-Star Medic.
We go out on top, right? That's
exactly. Well, plus, you know, I don't figure there's any way I'd get voted for this year, so it's cool. No, the timing it doesn't work for how I like to be able to prep game wise, especially with the, you know, not having played since Brisbane at all.
All you got to do now, seeing as you've got this rock and roll lifestyle, is approach your prep the way you would approach a gig. So find the bathroom stall, right, at the back of the center, and it's either coke or blowjobs, like one of the two. That's
preferably both at the same time, I would think.
Just to clarify, I'm not offering, just to put that out there.
Either of those things.
Things, yeah.
That's really
well,
good to know.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, actually, we'll see how desperate we get for a 6. No, we got a 6. It is a shame, you know, but shit happens. I mean, if you were coming, I'd probably have to put you as a commander.
That would be fucking terrible, but you know.
Right, whatever.
When was the last time that you played Commander in the Nationals?
Literally the last time that I played.
Can I take a guess?
Commander for any extended. You can take a guess, but the qualifying statement on this is the last time I played Commander in any type of extended capacity at a national. Okay. One-offs don't count.
So my guess would have been Brisbane 2005.
I'm gonna take the under on that.
No, I'm trying. Well, okay. So here's the thing. Brisbane 2005. I've tried to put a lot of that out of my head because that was so fucking terrible.
That was.
I mean,
yeah, it was a terrible net for us too, and we had a decent team, but it didn't have you on it, so that was our missing ingredient.
As was proved by the next year. Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
I mean, I played more heavy that tournament than Commander. Flame Break was actually playing Commander most often.
That makes sense.
That was the tournament that I had 3 100% accuracy games out of 4.
It's easy.
I had this record
when you only shoot like 10 people.
There were, admittedly,
Put the humble back in humble brag.
Admittedly, two of them, I think I only took like 30 or 40 shots, but one of them was like 82 for 82.
Still counts.
Yeah, still counts.
Yeah, I remembered you played Commander. I think it was that game you played Commander against us and fucking whooped our asses. And you're like,
yes,
yeah,
no, that was
mic drop.
Yeah, that was the practice night where I don't remember who. I don't remember who else I was playing with because it certainly wasn't the team I ended up playing for because that team was fucking terrible. But I do have like still to this day I have these very clear memories of just smacking you guys up one side of the maze and down the other, and like you guys coming out of that game just fucking demoralized because I had done that to you, and you guys were like.
Which you should be.
Yeah.
You should be demoralized if Than beats you across the arena from one side to the other.
Oh, we got just whooped all week. It was an awful week for us.
I'm starting to question this narrative of this quote-unquote decent team that you had in 2005.
Yeah. I sorry, I forgot to. You can't see my air quotes on a podcast.
I don't know. I mean, the 2005 team for Auckland. I mean, it had some good individual talent.
Oh yeah, on paper it was a really good team.
What it didn't have was solid unifying teamwork.
Yeah, we had no leadership on that team because I think that was my second nationals. I'd only been playing for a couple of years, so it wasn't quite the skilled leader that I am now. You know, basically could run a cult, get people to drink the Kool-Aid, yada yada.
Throw a couple of chairs. You know.
Yeah, well that's how. Celebration dance or something. That's what I'm going with. Hey, quick shout out to you, Than, for the intro music. I really appreciate, like you letting us like use your music royalty free.
Well, and
for
now, yeah.
So I mean, if it shows up claimed just randomly, that's not me. That's YouTube's algorithm doing its thing.
I thought you were gonna say, yeah, that's me changing my mind on the royalty-free part.
No. So basically, the last season of the Resupply podcast, we were using a Fuku and the Deadly Venom song. Well, we never registered that anywhere. There was no digital distribution on it or anything.
Right.
So whatever. The new band, Josh and the Jet Noise, for those of you who don't know, I think there might be one of you who don't know my
you should
band's
post
name.
about it in one of the tournament pages.
Totally abuse all my admin rights. Yes, because what else are admin rights for if not to abuse with your personal projects that you're proud of?
That's right.
Which, as much as I love seeing those, because I think you guys are a good band for what it's worth, it does kind of make me sad that that's like all the LTC member nights pages now is pretty much just people's random shit posting and you posting updates about the band because we can't play laser tag.
Yeah, that's
sad. It's like a Grack posted her slam poetry channel out, and she was like, well, if Chris gets to do this, then I get to do this, and it's like, well, yeah.
Yeah, fair point.
Well, and the reality is that as with any really in any site specific group, you over time, there's that whole family aspect of it, and really, I mean, people are sometimes interested in the other things that you're doing that are, that have a creative bent to them.
Absolutely.
So, you put the stuff out there, and maybe somebody's interested and clicks a link and says, "Hey, that's pretty cool," or they look at it and go, "Nah, that's not for me," and they skip over it just like your regular family does.
Yeah.
And so I don't,
deep cut.
So I don't see any real issue of people doing that in the forum, and I do have to be clear on the deep cut on the families skipping over things, but by and large, my family's actually been really super supportive of
Julie's like, pass. Not really into this band.
No, so funnily enough, like and this is gonna shit stir a little bit, like very early on in the process with this new band, she was like, I really like this a lot better than your last band. I was like, okay, cool, I guess.
I hated your last band, especially that one guy
with the long hair that never plays anymore. Yeah. But yeah, no, I've been really, really fortunate that the family that I care about, blood family and extended family, have all really reacted pretty positively to it. So it's always kind of one of those things, and no matter what you're doing creatively, this podcast, a business, anything, there's always that nervousness that when you create something and you put it out to the world, how are people going to react and respond?
I think if you're creating something that's predominantly for you, then it's less of an impact if like the world turns around and they're like, yeah, nah, not for me. Because at the very least, you're doing something that's creatively fulfilling for you. That's kind of how, like, I see this podcast is like, I really love talking about Laserforce with my friends, and like, we gather after members night on a Tuesday, and we'll probably sit around for another anywhere between 10 to half an hour, 10 minutes to half an hour, just talking about Laserforce or what's going on, that night, or what's going on in the scene at the moment, or whatever. And so for this podcast, for me, was kind of like, an
extension of that.
Yeah, that's right. And if people want to listen to it, cool. That's awesome.
And if they don't, well, fuck them too.
Yeah. Tom. No, I don't know if Tom listens.
I will say that.
We do know they get upset when there isn't an episode posted.
That's true. Yeah, you do cop some shit for that. Yeah. Bruh,
I
where's
will
my fix?
say that that is one of the things that I really do miss. With since the moving here and whatnot, not having that that weekly members night, or at this point I'd probably be okay with even every 2 weeks or a month or whatever.
The double tap,
but just
all things
exactly.
Laserforce and Space Marines.
Yep. And just having that camaraderie with people, and just and having that connection with people.
You would probably get it if you were like in a ska band, because then there's like 50 of you that you could talk about music with.
Yeah, that is the one drawback of being in a trio. There's only the three of us to talk shit with. Although, for anyone listening to this that's ever tried to do anything creative with multiple people, there only being three of us really simplifies the fucking schedule.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, the intro song for podcast now, Darkness. When I heard it, I think it was like maybe the first or second track that you sent me early on, and that
was the first.
It was the first. Yeah, that opening riff, I was like, holy shit, this is dope. So yeah, I really appreciate like the work you're doing, man. It's seemingly going well, which is nice. It's good to see.
Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, we literally just had our 1-year anniversary show
Nice.
this past Friday. So
there's some footage of that floating around, right?
Yeah, there's some footage of that on our YouTube channel.
Plug that shit.
Yeah, hey, dude, it's the band name is Josh and the Jet Noise, and we are on every digital platform. You can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Twitter, although we don't do much there. All Twitter is really our Instagram feed. That's pretty much all Twitter ends up being.
It's I've seen
that's pretty meta right there.
I've seen T-shirts and dog photos. That's what I've seen on your Instagram.
So basically the internet.
Yeah,
then.
that's right. Yeah.
Well, so I mean the whole the dog is our bass player's dog, and it was literally one of those.
Yeah, me too. That would have been like infinitely more interesting.
But that was like literally one of the things. Like, well, people like animals, so maybe we'll just weekly we'll incorporate our bass player's dog into the Instagram. And I know for a fact, just looking through our stuff, that there are definitely accounts that are following us just for the dog.
Yeah,
like straight up
genius marketing strategy.
just for the dog. But yeah, so yeah, one year playing live shows, and literally I think this show this last Friday was like the best show that we've ever played.
Nice.
And so I'm like kicking myself, like, oh, why didn't I tell Julie to record more songs? Why didn't we record the whole show? But that's like hindsight kicking.
Yeah.
Because just like, oh well.
Just like
okay,
in hindsight, you'd be like, why didn't I go to nationals? I totally could have gone to nationals.
Exactly.
And it's very possible that sometime during the week when I'm watching the Twitch stream, I may have a pang of I could be in Detroit hanging out with a bunch of people that I really love, but I'll get over it.
I can feel the love from here.
That's right.
But on the note of nationals, one of the actual reasons that we wanted to have you on, other than to plug your band, which we still appreciate, is I think a lot of U.S. players don't necessarily know that they enjoy having a nationals every year, in part thanks to you, Dan, since you kind of got the whole enterprise started all the way back in 1999. So I was wondering if you wanted to speak a little bit to that, and we can take a journey back in time 20 years to the very first U.S. Nationals, which I also attended as a wee lad.
Yes, you did. And there's still some bitterness there, but neither here nor there. We'll cover that as we get further. So
politics, man.
Yeah, politics are bullshit.
Did he? Yeah, we'll get there.
No, I promise.
No
we will
spoilers.
get there. So first U.S. Laserforce Nationals was it was either July or August of '99. I can't remember actually which month we put it in. I think it was July.
Me either. Summer '99 doesn't.
Yeah, so summer '99, and kind of the impetus for that was I actually had gone to the Australia Nationals in '99, which were around Easter, and they were in Newcastle, which that site no longer exists, hasn't existed for a lot of years. But it's this whole thing where I was coming off of a bad breakup, and just was like, I'm gonna do something completely, nuts, and I'm gonna go to Laserforce Nationals in Australia, because we'd gotten an email at the site basically saying, hey, this is when it's gonna be, and I was like, fuck it, I've got some money saved up, and this sounds interesting, and I'm pretty good. I'll go and do the thing.
Back in those days, plane tickets only cost $25.
No, sadly that
inflation,
was not,
kids, it's a killer.
No, that round trip ticket cost me, it was in about the $900 range. Even back in '99, kids, that was a thing. Pretty sure I got
approximately $10,000 now.
Yeah, not that bad, you know it. But basically, like that trip, I had spent part of it in Newcastle and part of it down in Sydney, but there's a whole bunch of extra stuff that goes with this that isn't really appropriate for this podcast whatsoever. But
I know what it is.
I know you know what it is.
Welcome to the Resupply late night.
Yeah, pretty much. But basically, I went down, I played in the Masters, did not play in the SM5 portion because I didn't realize how long the tournament actually was. So my flight back to Sydney was, basically when that was starting. But played Masters, got my very first SM5 games ever, because at that time we weren't playing SM5 in Sacramento at all.
We played a little bit. I think we were kind of alternating leagues at that point.
Not really. No, not really. We didn't really play an SM5 league until either just before or just after Nationals. We'd played a couple of games of it, but it certainly wasn't a thing. And so went down, got my first exposure to the you have to show a shoulder rule. Let me tell you, that was super interesting to run into.
Yes, we had not had any experience with that in the U.S. at the time.
Yeah, and what made it worse was that the Newcastle site. So Newcastle had Gen 4, and for those of us that have been playing, back far enough to remember Gen 4. We all remember those horrible fucking gun cases and the, one sensor in the gun that was in the tip that, people would, reach in and snap off.
Yeah, I never figured that part out, but I was just a kid who didn't know how to cheat, so I didn't do that.
Yes. And so they had basically MacGyvered their own guns with metal cases. So and I don't really think the gun sensors really worked on them all that well. And so I was doing, usual Sacramento style play, just throwing my gun out and shooting, and people are yelling at me, and yeah, that was fun.
Penalty.
Yeah, I was like, huh? What do you mean? Well, this is how you play properly. Huh? This is bullshit. And then played a few games, and I'm like, oh, actually, this makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. And so got back from that experience, and just eyes wide open, oh my god, the international rules are the best thing ever, and SM5 is the best thing ever.
You're not wrong.
It was not wrong on either count.
Yeah, not wrong on either count. And right about that point, I was relatively active on the old Alt Sport Laser Tag news group, because we are going back here, kids.
This is just at the crest of the invention of the internet.
This was 4 years before Facebook was even invented.
5 years. 5 years, because Facebook was invented in 2004.
It was early 2004. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't start really going wide until 06, 07.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, so
No, I had one of the early accounts as I was out of college at the time, but yeah.
You had the
Different.
Facebook.
Yes, it was the Facebook at that point.
so and just happened to see a post on there from someone from the Sugarland, Texas site. Said person happened to be Goofball, Jeff Willey, who is now the head of Laserforce US. So that's kind of an interesting career trajectory as far as that goes. But at the
Sleeping his
time,
way to the top.
well, at the time he was basically he was the general manager of the Sugarland store. And kids, you have to understand, back in those days, I think there were literally 6 Laserforce sites in the United States.
Oh, were there even that many?
Well, by that point, you're right. By that point, there may have been less, because there was Sacramento, there was Sugarland, there was Detroit.
Provo.
I think
Provo at the time.
Yeah, Provo was still open. I think Coeur d'Alene, Idaho was still open.
Yeah, Coeur d'Alene was technically the first one, wasn't it? They were 4-1.
Yeah, Coeur d'Alene's 4-1.
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is site of the first ever Laserforce in the U.S., so there's something for your road trip, kids.
What's the name of the town? Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene.
Think like French pronunciation. Sadly, it is also one of the it's in Idaho. Sadly, also known as one of the leading sites for neo-Nazi conventions on every couple of years basis.
What? At the laser tag center?
No, just in Coeur d'Alene and the surrounding area generally.
It's because one thing that, Nazis love is French-sounding names.
And actually, at the time, that may have been the only 5 that was open, because Site 4-2 was originally something in Pennsylvania, and that equipment got moved to Vegas, which then got moved to St. George.
Well, it's Provo and then Vegas, I'm pretty sure. Well, whatever. We can get into it.
Yeah.
There weren't that many laser forces in the point of the story.
The point being, I'm pretty sure it was like 5 at the time.
With you weirdos and your 4-36 numbers or whatever.
Yeah, 4-80 something. Anyway, so I saw this post, and it was like, clear as like, oh, Sugarland, and I had heard some, things from like other system players down there, and so I managed to get into a conversation with them, and we started emailing back and forth, and it was like, why don't we try and do something, try to get a basically an intersite competition going. And basically by default, we basically had to have it in Sugarland, because like all of their players were like 12, or most of their players were basically too young to travel, as it were. And at the time, Sacramento had already traveled to Provo at least once, just randomly. And so yeah, it was just between Jeff and me setting stuff up, and I really do have to give Jeff a lot of credit for being willing in the initial to listen to the idea and be okay, and be able to convince the owners there to actually host. So the reality is that, I did some of the initial reaching out, being very excited about trying to do this. But if Jeff doesn't convince the owners in Sugarland to be able to host, this never gets off the ground either. So, have to making sure that all credit is given where all credit is due, because
definitely the community owes both you guys a big debt for that.
There were definitely a lot of moving pieces that were happening in order for that to happen. And we sent 2 teams out, and I I feel like we did both SM4 and SM5. That's in fact,
We did.
Yeah.
And Masters.
That's right. So we did.
Over how long? Like a week?
Yeah, 5 days. I think we did basically 2 days for each of the Space Marines comps and then a 1-day Masters.
That's pretty cool.
And the Masters was kind of a cluster because it was done as like a double elimination, so it wasn't a real Masters, and there were like general public that got thrown into it as well.
Oh, I forgot about that part. Yeah.
Yeah. There were some things that definitely irritated 20-year-old me. 20-year-old me was definitely not completely a fan of some of the stuff that happened actually at the tournament itself, but that's life.
You guys have met Grumpy Than, but you have not met young Angry Than.
Yeah, no, young Angry Than was definitely young, angry, and grumpy. It was kind of an interesting combination, and man, you guys who have met me at tournaments think I'm unpleasant now at times. Whew. Yeah. but jumping back as to DK was one of the initial crop that came through on that. The running, well, now it's a joke. At the time, I was genuinely pissed off.
Yeah, I was a last-minute addition to the quote-unquote A team,
which basically one of their people had to drop because of personal reasons. And by personal reasons, I mean shit really fucking blew up in his personal life, and it was pretty terrible.
But hey, it worked out great for me.
Oh yeah, it worked out great for you. But
looking out for number one.
And just speaking my truth, guys.
Yeah.
But as far as like player tiering and whatnot, what should have happened, in quotes, is I should have been shifted up, and DK should have taken my spot with the B team. Technically, on player tiering, I should have probably been in the A team anyway, but
You don't sound
was
like...
Hey, game recognized game.
there was at the time, Sacramento was definitely a hive of scum and villainy, and there were definitely two very distinct cliques of players, which, as we've all aged and kind of
gotten over yourselves.
It's kind of funny in retrospect now.
Pretty much. There's a kind of recognition now of, we were all kind of douchebags to each other. Okay, well, whatever. Past is past. Move on. But at the time, I was not super thrilled, but you get that. So that's kind of been the running joke since then, is that DK took my spot on SAC A for the
And you've been mad about
nationals
it ever since.
Yeah, but I'm still gonna count that win. So
I mean, sure, that's fine, Dick.
And it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, I don't know. 2004 wasn't bad.
That was a good year.
That was a good year. So in the and then 99 was Sacramento, and then 99 was in Texas. 2000 we brought it back to Sacramento. And it's in hindsight, it is hard to call either of those really nationals, because there were only two sites. It was only Sacramento. It was only Sugarland. It wasn't until 2002 in Sugarland that there were U.S. players from sites other than Sacramento and Sugarland there, and 2002 that was Disco Stew and Mutant Roshi, and technically they weren't even really Detroit players, but they were kind of Detroit players at the time. They were more Blast players than anything else.
Yep, but intersite play has to begin somewhere, and sometimes that's just with 2 sites.
It's true.
That's what we're hoping for, for a local scene here. Build up a couple of the other Auckland sites.
Well, and for you guys especially, that would be fantastic because you've got like 3 sites now that are within.
That's right.
Basically easy driving distance, depending upon what rush hour traffic is doing. I understand that.
Like one's literally the next, motorway exit. So like, yeah, it's just down the road, which sucks for the site, but good for us as players, unless they cannibalize each other.
Well, and that is always a concern with the sites being that close to each other. But in a perfect world, you guys have 3 sites that are within 30, 45 minutes total of each other.
That's right.
Furthest point to furthest point.
Yeah.
It's just more laser tag exposure.
That's right.
No, it's more laser tag exposure. It's more arena exposure. Because I would feel fairly certain that all 3 of those arenas probably play a little differently.
Yeah, it's crazy actually how much of a variance they are, and it's really good to be able to go and like get a fresh experience just down the road from where you live.
Yeah. There were a couple of kinks to work out, remember, with the early U.S. Nationals, because I don't think, did we even really have access to the international rule set? You knew what they were, but I don't know that we had the official rule book, so I think we ended up using like a modified version of just the zone tournament rules in 99, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that was basically the genesis of the American rules was modifying the zone rules because they existed, and maybe we did have copies. I feel fairly certain that I did have copies of them at that point, but I also feel fairly certain that pretty much everybody else in Sacramento, bar a few exceptions, were like, fuck you, we're not playing with those rules. And since the owners were in that camp of, no, we're not playing with those rules, it made it really hard to get traction there.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a setback. I think 2002 was the first time we played with international rules in the U.S.
And that was because we had international people coming, and they were like, yeah, do the thing.
Yeah, but I know, at least speaking for myself, I got a lot better after that, playing by proper rules. And then we did it in 2004. Then unfortunately, when it came back to the U.S. again in 2009, we were not using those rules initially, but we ended up correcting that again after 2010, and it's stayed corrected ever since. So happy ending to the story.
We lost. I think we lost like a fair chunk of players from the States because of that rule change, but
fuck them.
Shit happens.
Well, and I know that we've had this particular conversation in previous seasons and episodes of the podcast, but I mean, yes, the rules create a better game. They admittedly do create a higher barrier to entry. So that is definitely a concern. I mean, there are things in the way that we do things that create certain logical barriers to expansion, and there's really only kind of 2 ways that I see that expansion ends up happening. From a quantity of sites expansion, you rip it back to what the original nationals were, where each site gets 1 team, and you've got to qualify through your site, and in a more macro level, potentially through a region to get to a nationals. So that's one potential thing. The other thing, which is complete anathema, if you like Space Marines 5, like most of us do, is you butcher the shit out of it, and you make Space Marines 4x3 7.5 minute year tournament game, and you basically go back to U.S. rules.
You get a lot more games in. That's for sure.
Get and that's what I'm saying. I mean, there are some things with that is a legitimate discussion to be had from the aspect of lower barriers to entry. It does allow for sites that are set up more as FECs to be considered for tournament play. It means that you don't necessarily have to have as many people to be able to get to a tournament. But the flip side of that is that it's Space Marines 4, which
it's fun. It's a fun game, but it just doesn't have the same balance as Space 5.
I don't think it's as broken as as we like to say it is. I think we'd like to say it's completely broken for a certain amount of comedic effect.
Not completely, but
well, the heavy position's kind of broken. But other than that, it's a fun game.
You're stronger than everyone. You get rapid fire. You get missiles. You get payback. Like, holy shit, dude!
Literally all the cool things.
The only thing that evens that up is if at the start of the game you're allowed to hobble the opponents heavy before you play. And that way they play with a limp.
Is that what you did to Baden last year?
Yeah, but
yeah, but if you're playing with 4-person teams and the heavy cannot get double tap to get ammo, like that actually kind of helps balance that back out. But that's a whole game theory discussion at that point.
Yeah, we don't need to necessarily get into it, but I think to some extent there is kind of room for both tournament tracks in the US because we do have so many sites. If we had sufficient interest to do something like that, I mean, the story of parallel sports leagues in America is pretty long. For years, there was the ABA and the NBA. Now, sure, eventually the NBA won out because it was a superior product, and that could well happen because I think that's what Space Marines 5 is. It's a superior product. But we've kind of come around to this whole idea of, well, do we need to cut down on the number of teams that each side is sending? Do we need to have regional qualifiers? But it usually works out. It shakes out to the fact of, well, we're probably not going to have more than 10 teams in the tournament anyway, so we don't need to actually make that a problem until it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens in the future, but I'm content to think that there could potentially be parallel tracks for tournament play.
Yeah, if you ran them as two different scenes essentially, and you have
because there are definitely people who would do both.
Yeah, I would do both. I'd love to do both. But yeah, I think Space Marines, it's just Space 5 has that nuance that Space 4 doesn't quite have. But in saying that, if you were running, what would you say, 4v3 7.5 minute games, that's a fast tournament. That would be pretty fun. It would just be different. It would be a different thing than Space 5.
Yeah.
Well, and the positive there is that there wouldn't be scheduling wise, and of course this is where I go because I've done most of the scheduling for a lot of the tournaments over the years.
Yeah.
Scheduling, you don't have to reinvent the wheel because for as much as we like to rag on Zone for it being an inferior game and whatnot, they've been doing 3-team tournaments for fucking years. They have these schedules, they exist, and you can just plug shit in and go.
Yeah.
So we don't have to reinvent the wheel to do this. It's like I said, it's definitely not necessarily something. It's not a discussion that I'm particularly necessarily thrilled that we have to have, but there's definitely a place for it when so much of the discussion in recent times is how do we manage number of teams? Well, why do we want to manage the number of teams? Why do we want to say no, you can't do X, Y, Z because we have these really these capacity problems that are self-inflicted. They're really self-inflicted capacity problems because of how we want to run things in order to get the most fair, in quotes, result.
The most fair and the highest level of play that's possible in the tournament scene.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's obviously there's a bunch of discussion and has been for the last couple of years now about the expansion issues, and it kind of in my view it kind of comes down to there has to be some compromise somewhere, and that's either the amount of games that people get to play during a week, or the amount of teams that we get to have at a competition. Because obviously we've got a week. We've got a week to fit all these games in, and the more it's just simple math, right? The more teams you have, the less games each player is going to be able to play. So,
well, and then there's also what does the price per game break back to, and how much, and the big overarching thing, how much money is the facility going to make?
Yeah.
Because if the facility's not going to make enough money to warrant doing the thing, they're not going to do the thing.
That's right.
We've been
Bingo.
We've been very fortunate as a scene to either have owners who are players and are therefore willing to do things for a little bit less than maybe they should have, or we've had owners that fortunately we've been able to talk around to our way of thinking, that they maybe did it for a little less than they otherwise would have because they liked us. So yeah, I mean that's definitely a thing also.
That's certainly the case with the Auckland owners for next year. Like, they are hella keen on bringing the tournament scene down our way. And yeah, they've just jumped on board, so it's going to be cool.
Yeah. I mean, now that one, well, I will definitely be in Auckland sometime next summer. Whether or not the trip is timed around playing nationals is an open question.
Well, just to put it out there, I've been speaking to a certain expat Kiwi who'd like to play Commander a lot, and he's gonna make some moves for next year. So
Oh, that motherfucker. The genuine challenge on my side with that is that my wife
try not to be so famous. I know.
No. Well, okay, that too. I mean that hey, stranger things have happened. But no, the real consideration is my wife just started another master's program
that's
a few months ago. And yes, I say another one because she already has one. And so in a perfect world, we would try to time the trip so that, the 1 week during the summer where she's not going to have any schoolwork to do, we time it with that week included so that she at least has 1 week where she can, enjoy being back in a country that both of us very much love.
Mm.
So there's some things there. I mean, if it doesn't line up with nationals with that, then
you'll just leave her at home.
I would be murdered, like straight up murdered, and you would never find the body. Like Van would just vanish. The insurance money would get collected. Nobody would know what had happened, but I would straight up be murdered. Like that is what would happen there. Like last year,
fair enough. We've all contemplated it, so I mean,
that's fair. But like last year for Brisbane, before I FOMO'd into that one, like there was we actually had a conversation. I want to say it was like a couple of weeks before I bought my ticket, where it was like, well, maybe I could go down without you, and like we were driving and she verbalized that. She's like, well, yeah, maybe you could, and she stopped and she paused for about like 5 or 6 seconds. She's like, actually, no, that's completely unacceptable. If you go to Australia, I have to come with you. Which for those of you without your secret Dakota rings, my wife is from Australia. Her family lives in Brisbane, so that was
you're not making that trip without her.
Yeah. And so it's very, it would be the same thing for me traveling to New Zealand, because we the 4.5 years that we lived there were absolutely incredible, and
basically like the foundation of your whole relationship, right? Is rooted here in New Zealand.
New Zealand was the first place that we got to live together. We had visited each other doing the long distance thing, before for extended periods, but that's different than actually living with somebody. And so you
need to test out and make sure you're not going to murder one another. So that's probably a good step.
Yeah. So I can basically we'll say 99% guarantee I'm going to be in New Zealand next summer, because there's always that 1% where something could, something where it could happen. Like if something strange happened, like one of our songs caught and suddenly things were happening, that might change my calculus for next summer.
Would come in that, but the world tour doesn't allow for it.
God, or I was gonna say like Trump shuts down all U.S. air travel or some crazy shit like that.
Oh. Hey, I have my U.S. passport is renewed, and my residency for New Zealand is moved to my new passport already. So paperwork wise, I'm good. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So you heard it here first, folks. Than's definitely coming to Auckland 2020.
1,000%.
Which, if I haven't said on the podcast before, which I'm 100% sure I have, is Auckland's 20th year anniversary.
Oh, hey, are you guys going to have a national tournament that year, Steve?
Yeah, I think we might. There's some rumblings about it.
Hey, that sounds pretty good. I might have to come to that.
Yeah, I think you should. The FOMO starting early this year, folks.
Well over a year in advance.
Yes, right.
Well, I have FOMO pretty much every week since I don't get to play laser tag right now. So
yeah,
even from here, I mean, when you guys were uploading the stats every week, I was still like going and like checking, like seeing what had happened with the games that night, that and the other. And now that doesn't happen, it's like, oh, I have a sad. But if I have a sad, that means that everybody who's still there has like tears. Oh. This sucks.
How long has it been since you lived near a site? A regular, like a site that you could play on the regular?
Well, I moved to Texas in July of 2014, so it's coming up on 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I think you moved literally the day that I left for Brisbane.
Holy crap. Yeah, that's too long. We missed it for like about a year, I think, when everyone decided to move countries and stuff. And yeah, that was way too long for me, so I don't envy you boys who have to live vicariously through the podcast.
Just don't take it for granted, man.
That's right. Come down and play.
No.
Support your local Laserforce center.
Yeah, I definitely have been living vicariously through the podcast at this point.
Actually, quick shout out. So I found out yesterday that the podcast that you all so lovingly listen to has been shared by Laser Blaze out in Western Australia.
Out in Perth.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, so they've started sharing the pod, I think one a day up until their tournament begins in August. I think they're running a Australian laser tag titles in August. So shout out to you guys. Yeah. Hopefully you guys get a decent turnout, and we appreciate the support. So yeah, if you're not doing anything in August, folks, and you're coming down off your Nationals hangover, head out to Western Australia and play some Laserforce. I don't actually know any of the details for that tournament. I don't know if they're playing SM5 or
they're playing a mix of things that they're doing. I'm doing this from memory. Like they're doing SM5. They're doing the Z game because that
Force Field is, I think, what they call it, the Zone emulator game.
So I've got it up here. They've got Space Marines, Force Field, Doubles, and Highlander, which is kind of cool. And they've got a bunch of trophies by the look of it.
Well, if I remember correctly, that's a converted zone site. So that's there's some.
Well, there are a few of those, and I mean, in fairness, the Force Field Zone emulator game, when it's actually run on Laserforce hardware, it actually is kind of a fun game. So if that's what is going to help bring in Zone players to the Laserforce scene, then I'm all for it.
I'd be interested to see what kind of rule set they're going to run around this tournament. Because obviously rules are important, people. Rules are how the games are made even more fun.
Yeah, and I mean, people have this thing about the high barrier to entry and the rules being not necessarily super user-friendly for amateurs, which I can appreciate, I understand. At the same time, is there anybody in the world who can explain the offsides rule in soccer?
Yes.
Probably not, and that's super common. Everybody loves soccer.
Now,
everybody outside the U.S. anyway.
Before Than starts getting into football rules, I'm
not going to
divert the conversation.
It is literally incomprehensible.
Yeah. Full stop. Cool. All right. Well, look.
It's more complicated than chasing rule. I'll say that.
Look, we've been talking for about an hour or so now. But do you guys want to touch on anything else?
I think the only thing I was going to say is, since we were talking about scheduling and all that, I am kind of looking forward to this tournament. It will be our first experiment with pool play, where we're actually going to split the field in half. So you'll be primarily playing against 4 other teams in your kind of division during the week, but we are going to have a round where you're going to cross over and play the teams that are outside of your division, and then for finals we'll seed the top 8 in between the pools, and you'll kind of play out of your division again. So you'll have a chance to probably play everybody at some point or another, and if you're going to ascend all the way to the top of the ladder, you're going to have to beat all the best teams. So it's not quite what we've done in other years, but I'm excited to try something different. Yeah. I think it will be interesting at the very least, and it will at least give us enough kind of hours in the day to log in some downtime for teams to go get food and do whatever else. So I think it's going to be good.
Do you know how that's going to affect the play time for the day?
I think we're still pretty much planning to go for like 12-hour days, but there's probably going to be, in a lot of cases, we should have Beans on to actually talk about the schedule at some point.
Yeah, we should do that.
Once it gets finalized, anyway. I don't know that we've officially finalized the schedule yet, but we have like 95% of the gridding done for all that. But I think there will be definitely blocks during the day where, even though kind of the tournament's running for 12 hours a day, your team may have a 4-hour break or something. So if you needed to go back to your hotel, or you want to just go out for a meal or something like that, there'll be time so you're not just constantly at the center and then waiting around for an hour and then popping back into a game. So I'm hoping it will be a little bit more friendly in that regard, so long as people are good about getting back on time when they are scheduled to play.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there.
Indeed.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's a good idea. We'll leave the scheduling stuff for when we get Beans on. If we get Beans on. He might be...
Yeah, either that or I can have him distill the essence of the schedule to me, since he's very microphone shy.
Yeah, he's
He
a
looks
pretty
at beans.
he's a pretty quiet guy.
He's like Sasquatch.
He's currently busy with his band, being too famous to come on the podcast. All right. Well, look. On that note, it's good to have you back on the mic with us, Dan. It's been a minute since we were on the podcast.
Yeah, real life scheduling. It's a bitch, but I will say that it's been nice to listen to the pods with DK on and kind of going, well, these are definitely better than when I was doing them. So,
well, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that DK's replaced you, so.
That is unfortunately a very accurate statement. So yes.
Boom, roasted.
Yeah. But
I'm
yeah.
all serious though. Like, congratulations with the band.
Yeah,
And like that. It's great to hear that you guys are doing well and having some real success, even if that is complicating your ability to be on the podcast or attend Lasers tournaments.
That's right.
First world problems.
Yeah, I'm too famous to do my Laserforce gig.
The best kind of problems.
That's right. All right. Well, for this week, I've been Guy Next Door.
And I've been DK.
And always remember to backtrack, kids. We'll see you next week.